Hello and welcome back to the official Scottish Rugby podcast. On the show this week, Rachel Malcolm and Al Kellock chat with former Scotland players Chris Cusiter and Scott Murray. Plus, all three of us sit down with Scotland's National Clinical Director, Professor Jason Leitch.
Hello and welcome to the official Scottish Rugby podcast. Rachel and I are here, but today we're joined by two ex-Scotland players who are now plying their trade over in America. Welcome to Chris Cusiter and to Scott Murray. How are you guys?
Perfect. Very well, thank you, Al.
Good. Well, loosely themed, this is living in the USA. So why don't we start with you, Cus? Let us know, where are you at the moment and what's going on in your life?
Yeah, so we live in Los Angeles. I bought a business here in 2015. We moved here in 2016, and it's a whiskey retail business. We do a lot of online stuff. I love Scotch whiskey. Kind of fell in love with it in the last few years of my career, and decided, I wanted to be involved with it, and we wanted to do it in California. So yeah, sell a lot of Scotch whiskey, a lot of bourbon recently, and yeah, just trying to figure out the real world.
Does that give you a lot of opportunities, Cus, to be speaking to people back in Scotland, or do you do most of that kind of wholesaling through your contacts in America?
Yeah, it's mostly California-based distributors that we deal with. It does help having some contacts in Scotland. There's a relatively new distillery up in Thurso called Wolfburn. I've gotten to know the owner a wee bit there. Great distillery, and I think it's nice. Honestly, nice having those connections back home and having that connection to Scotland, because we're a long way away. So I think we haven't been back for a while. We had our flights cancelled this year, but next time we go back, I definitely want to visit a few more distilleries and keep building up those contacts.
You'll need to come in and see the guys at Johnny Walker. Not all that long ago became Scotland's official whiskey. Johnny Walker, there'll be a decent trade in America for Johnny Walker, isn't there?
Yeah, it's huge. It's the biggest whiskey brand in the world. So,
and are you adding to your own personal collection along the years as well?
Yeah, no, I every now and again, I don't buy much, but every now and again something comes across, I'm like, I've got to buy that. So
nice. And Scotty, we had you on the Krabby's Changing Room chat a few weeks ago, but for anybody that didn't watch that, give us a bit of an insight into what you're up to.
I'm in North County, San Diego, in a little town called Carlsbad, and still coaching. I dipped my toe into the real world like Cuss, but didn't really like it much, so got back into rugby as quickly as I could. We've obviously a tough season last season. We were 5-0, unbeaten, and they called off the season. So we're just we're full on prep mode for next season. So.
Are you guys, obviously the situation's different all across the world at the moment, are you guys able to actually be in and get training as a squad at the moment?
No, we can't come together. The guys are, we can go to the office. We're allowed 6 guys in the office. But other than that, we can't really do anything. So at the moment, actually, we just, the situation is we paid all the guys' contracts out. The MLR and the owners paid all the contracts out. So we're now in the recruitment phase. So we've got to jump on it a little bit. So we're trying to get our squad together, get all our contracts ready so we can start training as soon as possible, as soon as we're allowed to.
Scotty, remind us who you're with.
San Diego Legion.
And when you say you're coaching, you are newly appointed to co-head coach. Very newly appointed. Yeah,
very newly. Yeah, about a week ago, it happened. It all happened. Exciting times. I just wanted to be called coach, but apparently here titles are pretty big, so I was like, whatever. So it's good. Good coaching with a young kid called Zach Test, who's very knowledgeable, really good on the attack, and and we have the squad we had last year. Hopefully, we'll get them back. We had guys like Marnonu, Josh Ferno, who's an Italian second row. So we had a lot of talent within the squad that kind of coach themselves. So that's the way we're trying to go.
You still use your age-old advice that you jump high, push hard, and run fast?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what you told me for 4 or 5 years when you were helping me through. So, Scotty, with us just up the road a little bit from you, you've been tempted to get him down. He could do a little bit of scrum half coaching for you.
Yeah, definitely. Also, there's a new LA franchise that's just happening. You might get involved there. It's tough because American rugby at the moment, everything is, I wouldn't say budget, because they're going full out to make this competition the more most professional they can, but there's just not a lot of money. The budget, the salary cap's very low. So it's kind of like, I call it American style coaching and American style rugby. So you just do what you can when you can, and we'd love to get Cus down as long as he wanted to come down for a high five or a beer in payment.
How does the league work in America? Is it done regionally, or is it throughout the whole of America for the top league?
Well, the first year was the whole of America. Last year they did an East and West conference, which was good. It saved us flying to New York and Ontario, or Toronto, sorry. So this year we have Dallas and LA that are joining us, and they haven't really come out with a plan yet because Colorado Raptors have dropped out because they want to become the hub of USA Rugby. So I think they're steering away from professional rugby and trying to become like an Olympic training ground sort of thing. So that's their plan. So it's weird. There's going to be like 13 teams. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think it will still be East and West Coast, but they'll be out of conference games as well.
And then do you play off at the end of the season for the overall winner?
So, yeah. So the top of the whoever wins their conference goes straight to the semi, and the 2 and 3 play off to get that other semi spot.
Cool.
And then if you win your league, you also get a home final as well, which is quite good because that's obviously a big bonus. But
I think we've got Cus back after a few technical issues. Cus, are you back on?
I'm back, guys. Sorry about that.
Well, when you were away, we've got you signed up for 2 days a week down with Scotty in San Diego, and you're going to get a beer, and every second session you'll get your dinner as well. So, like, the job's done. We've done the contract.
No petrol money.
Oh no, petrol over there. You don't know you're living. Ours is as cheap as it's been in years and years, but nobody's driving anywhere.
Nobody's driving, yeah.
Cus, we were having a dig into your business. You're over in LA and you're running. How long have you been over there now?
4 years.
4 years, and enjoying the challenges, although they are very different to what went before.
Yeah, for sure. First year, I'd say, was probably the most stressful year. I wouldn't say I regretted it, but I was wondering what I'd done. And then slowly, as things started turning around and figured out, how things work and how to run a business, and the business was growing, then it became more enjoyable. And I'd say the last 2 years have been really good. But yeah, it's hard to finish rugby and go into something. And I think, Scott and Al, you guys know what it's like. And it is hard, age 34 or whatever you are when you retire, you kind of have no experience in anything other than playing rugby. And all of your friends and peers are, 13 years into a career, they know what they're doing or should know what they're doing by then. And you feel like a kid. So yeah, it was definitely tough, but hey, it doesn't get much sympathy. I wouldn't change anything. It would obviously play rugby for that long or longer again. But yeah, it definitely poses a challenge when you come out of it and you have to, figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
And the sales part of it, Cus, is it predominantly Scotch whisky, or is it a mix across everything?
We started off, we were probably mainly Scotch whisky, but things have changed in the last couple of years. Bourbon is such a big deal over here just now. Plus the tariffs that Trump put on Scotch whisky single malt, it basically increased the price by about 30% or so, which is a big hike. It's already expensive, even more expensive. So yeah, it's boosted the bourbon industry, but I obviously feel for the Scotch industry, and I imagine that their exports must be down because people are they're just not going to buy at those prices. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, and yeah, we do more bourbon by volume for sure. But I love Scotch. I love selling Glendronach or Glenfarclas and all these amazing distilleries, but it is getting harder because the prices, a 30% price increase on any commodity is gonna rule some people out.
Scott, you still like a dram?
Yeah, I do. I'll be honest, I had a couple of wee cheeky bourbons as well, but no, I still like the occasional Oban or Talisker. But not so much now when you're up every hour on the hour and It's a wee bit difficult. It's a wee bit harder to recover from a dram, should we say?
Well, we've not touched on that yet. You not only have you had a big week in the fact there's a bit of movement in your coaching world, but you've also just had your second kid. Young Josh was born on, was it Friday?
Friday night, yeah.
Fantastic. And Lisa doing well?
She's doing well, yeah. Everything was a lot simpler this time. You add drugs to the equation, everything gets a little bit easier, right? So it was a completely different experience. In and out, 24 hours. So wee Josh is not so wee. So he's eating well. He's healthy. He's got bigger hands than me. So I think he's going to be a lock, hopefully. But no, crazy. Yeah, it's been a hectic couple of days. But Lisa's parents have been here, so that's helped. But they're not here today, which is a bit of they're coming back on Thursday. So.
What's your biggest thing that you missed from living in Scotland?
I think like friends and family is the obvious thing. You know, we're a long way away, 12 hours flight to get back, so that's definitely the hardest part. I miss Glasgow a lot. You know, we lived there for 5 years in the West End. I love Glasgow. I see your face, Scotty. I love Glasgow. I love all the restaurants, bars, concerts. You know, it's a great place to live. The weather is pretty terrible, which is probably the main drawback. But yeah, I miss that. You know, America's different. People are different. Living in California is amazing in many ways. It's also very different in many ways. And I think if we could blend, you know, a mix of the two, you know, the good weather, the beaches and everything here with the culture over there, that would be ideal. But yeah, in the meantime, try and come back a wee bit more often to see everyone, and that would be, you know, pretty good for us.
Yeah, same with me. Friends, family, you miss them hugely. But I mean, if you think about it, Preston Pans is very much like Carlsbad, right? Lovely beaches, lovely weather.
Everybody in Preston Pans is going to be delighted with that comparison, Scotty. Absolutely delighted.
Yeah, San Diego beaches are pretty much the same as the Preston Pans beach.
And you, Scotty and Chris, not only a big part of your life in Scotland, a big part of your rugby life in Scotland as well. Chris, you'd spent how many years at the Borders and then away for a couple of years and back to the Warriors?
4 years at the Borders and in France for a couple, and then 5 years in Glasgow.
And do you still keep half an eye on how Glasgow are getting on?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, absolutely. I follow it. We can't get the games live, so try and pick up the highlights. There's still a few guys playing. You know, I guess I left there about 6 years ago now, so there's still a few guys that are still there. Not many, actually, if I think about it. But I love that club. Love the city. So I keep an eye on it. Love watching the young scrum halves. Ali Price was there when I was there in the academy, and I think he hurt his knee, so he had a bit of he did his ACL, I think, maybe in my last year, but he's obviously come through. I love watching George Horn. I don't know him; he wasn't there at the time. Obviously, know Pete, his big brother, but love watching him play. He's like unbelievable support lines and speed and fitness, and yeah, he's a cracking player. So yeah, I keep an eye on it, and it's fun. I watched the final when they were at Celtic Park, and I was gutted when it started raining because it felt like if it had stayed dry, it was their day. But it's a great club. Honestly, it's a great club, and it's fun to keep an eye on it.
Scotty, you grew up playing in Preston Pans, and then you were playing for Edinburgh Accies, was it, at the time, when you then got offered the return of professionalism? You got offered the opportunity to go down south?
Yeah, to Bedford, which was brilliant. You know, still, I think it was the best 3 years I've ever played down in Bedford, because it was just kind of turning professional, so it wasn't there yet. So you could have some, not that you don't have fun as a proper professional, but, it was just a lot more relaxed and less pressure.
Did you not used to fly down on a Thursday, train once, pick up your BMW, drive to train once, drive back to the airport on a Saturday and fly back up? Was that not your 3 years?
No, that was for the first year. The next 2 years I went proper pro. Oh. Managed to get my bench press up to 95.
You were my weights partner for the first 4 years of my career.
That must have been a huge boost for you.
A huge boost. It was.
A huge boost for you.
Used to think I was the weakest in the team, and then I got to lift with you. I do remember regularly when it was 3 sets, it would get to the end of the second, and you'd be like, "That'll do.
That's plenty."
That's the mentality.
Before every last set, I'd be like, "You got me, big girl. You got me. Just so I could get them up.
It's just the long levers. You've got very long levers to move weights. You locks.
And no muscle. What
about the women's game in America? Is there an opportunity for Rach to come over and play a trade over there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially at college level, collegiate level. You know,
I'm done with education. Spent far too long in there.
No, but it's a cushy job as a coach, though. If you want to be a coach there,
You're retiring me already.
Yeah. I'm just saying you've got to start preparing now. You've got to start preparing now for your future. We'll do what I did, wait till the last minute and then say, "Oh God, what am I going to do now?"
we had Greg Laidlaw and Johnny Beattie on last week and having a bit of a look at their time in France, which for both of them is still ongoing, although there's a bit of change coming, as they both talked about. You boys both had a bit of time over there. You enjoy that the different cultural elements of that?
Yeah, we coincided, I think, Scott, I was only there for 2 years, but I'm trying to remember where you were. You were at Cast or Montauban? I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I was started at Montauban and moved to Cast afterward.
Okay, yeah, I remember we played against each other at least once. Yeah, France was awesome. It's so different. I don't know what it's like now. It's a long time ago. I left in 2009. I hope it's more professional. I doubt it is. They were very old school. Like, it's the same fitness drills that they did in the 70s. They were still doing them. They didn't really believe in weights. Sports nutrition was non-existent. But despite that, it was still like an amazing place to play. And they focused on different things, rather than the kind of gym and fitness nutrition mentality. It was all about, skill and, off the cuff, and the stadiums are amazing. Like, I played at Perpignan, 14,000 seat stadium, like crazy crowd, so partisan, like would have been tough for the away team. And likewise, you go to Bayonne or Toulouse, and like in these amazing stadiums, and it was fun. Like, I really enjoyed it. Sometimes I wish I stayed a bit longer. Sometimes I was kind of happy to leave. But yeah, it was a good time. Nice lifestyle. Looking back at it now, nice lifestyle. Like living down the south, sunshine, quite cheap to live down there. Visiting the bakeries and getting your baguettes and cakes and croissants on a Sunday. Like, that was a good time.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Did you never go out? You never thought about it?
I thought about it. There was 1 year, I think it was before, I think you were maybe even over there at the time. We had Biarritz we had in Europe, and that stimulated a few conversations. And I did think about it, but I don't know. I just a bit of a homebird, and settled here in Glasgow, and like I totally get why. And you, even speaking to Greg and Johnny as well, you can see not only from a rugby point of view, but from a family point of view as well. Like, they've both brought up young kids over there, and they're bilingual, and they're living the outdoor life. So I get it all, but like, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily. I'm not one for going back and say I would make any changes. So reasonably happy. What about you, Scotty? As far as your influences are concerned now into your coaching role, and when you look at you've dotted about and played a bit of rugby in different countries. Is there anywhere in particular that you take all of that knowledge from, for what you're doing now?
Just little bits from everything. Like, I spent 6 years playing in France, and then 3 years coaching. And I loved every minute of it. I loved France. And then I came back here where, I thought we were living a dream, me and the wife. Lisa's drinking wine on a Tuesday afternoon, and then I'm coaching. We're making really nice money, and she turns around and is like, "I want to go home." I'm like, "Wait, what?" So I was like, I've spent all this time learning French, making all these contacts in France, to move to California where everyone speaks Spanish and I know nobody. So it was a bit of a transition. But then I got into the college game, and then I got into kind of not I wouldn't say semi-professional, but like club, but you give them a little bit of money here and there, buy their flights and stuff at Santa Monica. So I think I've got a good, variation on all the kind of coaching styles and stuff that you have to adapt to. Like coaching a full-on professional in France is way different than coaching a college kid, coaching a guy that's coming 2 nights a week sort of thing, and then back to professional. So I tried to take a little bit from everything that I did and take it to this role now that I'm doing as the head coach.
I guess from a coaching point of view, wonder if there's any like coaches who you've had that have inspired you, so potentially from when you played for Scotland or from club times as well.
Most of my coaching career I had like Jim Telfer, who I think he thought my name was Stuart for 10 years, but he was probably one of the best coaches I've ever had, just in terms of what made me tick. And I think he really challenged me, and he was nasty, he was hard. And then towards the end of my career, when I started to lighten up a little bit, I think Todd Blackadder was just incredible. I mean, his man management and knowledge of the game was incredible. And so I've tried to kind of like mold both of those. Like there's times to be tough and shout, and then there's times to take a guy aside and say, look, why don't you try this? And because I mean, when I first came back to Edinburgh, Al, I don't know if you remember, I was playing some rubbish rugby. I wasn't happy. I was like, and then Todd kind of like took me aside and was like, look, I think you're trying too hard, because I'm like hitting every ruck I can. I'm like flying in. And he's like, why don't you just, hit half as many rucks as you are now and try and get your hands on the ball and get back to the times when you enjoyed playing rugby. And I still remember that conversation because it kind of turned me around and got me back into enjoying what I was doing. And so, like I say, yeah, my point is I try and do that with these guys here. We've got to enjoy what we're doing because it's a stressful job. Every weekend is crazy difficult. So we don't want to put any more stress on these guys than we have to. So trying to make it fun, but make it so that when it comes to those stressful moments, they're ready for them.
Rich, I signed for Edinburgh the same year that Scotty did. So I was 20, turning 21, and Todd Blackadder was coaching. So he was captain at the time. So he was my captain, or our captain, for 2 years, and then our coach for 2 years. Which is, I suppose, in itself a difficult transition at the same club to go through. But I'm the same as you, Scotty. The influence he had on me was enormous. I was lucky. I mean, I had Todd Blackadder, all black second row as well, although he played in the back row for Edinburgh. I had Scotty as well. Now, Scotty did an enormous amount for me, both on and off the park. He gave Ali Hogg and I a room in Edinburgh every time we needed it, and looked after us, and like we became close friends off the back of it. But Todd's small conversations, and I still remember some of them, Scotty, to your point around, I remember him saying to me at one point, what are you waiting for? Like, don't wait for your turn. Like, step forward. Don't be scared of making mistakes in a game. Just go out there and play the way you want to play. And just little things like that you remember throughout the rest of your career, he had a big influence on. So and I try and take some of the lessons I learned from him. It's not in the performance side of the game anymore, Scott. It's the commercial side for me, as you know. But yeah, he was a top man. What about any of the other boys? Are you still in touch, Scotty, with any of the lads? Buffa back in New Zealand or anybody like that?
Yeah, all of them. Especially a lot of the guys I play with in France. Buffa, Marty Leslie, John Leslie reaches out every so often. Marcus DeRollo, Andy Kelly, who was a good buddy of mine. Big Ned. He's back in Edinburgh now, I think, coaching. So yeah. Because of this COVID-19 thing, I've been trying really hard to do a lot of like Zoom calls and get reach out to Mick the Kick, who coached me back in the Scotland days. Roddy Grant, we had a chat with him. Just reaching out to all these different coaches to try and like get a little bit insight as to what they're trying to do and how they're trying to grow their teams and stuff. And it's been I've had some really nice catch-ups. That's the one good thing about this, is that I've had some real nice catch-ups with people from all over the world.
What about you, Cus? Even from a business or a social point of view, other than the WhatsApp group that you, me, John Welsh, Graham Morrison, and Johnny Beattie, and it's funny, like Cus is on the other side of the world, but like the guys are only scattered around various parts of the UK and Europe, but we catch up as regularly with Cus as we do with each other.
Yeah, it's nice, and I think like we had a Zoom call about a month ago, and honestly, it made my month. Catching up with old rugby pals is the best, and I don't know. I think it will always be like that. I think when you've gone through those experiences that we went through, when we were all at Glasgow, for example, all the stupid things that you do in pre-season or the tough games you've gone through and the all the nonsense, like it really, I think it makes you pals for life, and you can pick up the phone or jump on Zoom years later and you still have a laugh. It's like nothing's changed. And I think that's probably, honestly, is what I miss the most about rugby. Like I don't really miss the training. I don't miss the games for sure. I don't miss the training, although I like being really fit. But there's the crack and the camaraderie and your mates that you've gone through all these things together. I think it bonds you together for life. So yeah, it's it's like I say, it's like you've never been away when you catch up again. If you and I catch up, or if you jump on a call, or if Welshie's talking rubbish on WhatsApp group, it's brilliant. Like
reasonably regularly.
Yeah.
Rach is going through all this in a moment. A big emphasis, Rach, and we chatted about it in the podcast. And the women's team is the culture that they're building off the field. They're working incredibly hard to make it a tight group. You're speaking to three old men now, Rach. You've kind of been through it. We're all reminiscing, but you guys are still right in the kind of heart and soul of that, and building that culture within the women's team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've chatted about it loads. It's something that we kind of pride ourselves on, is having that balance between knowing when to work hard and switch it on, but also having that fun and building memories and making memories that you want to think about later. So I guess you guys reflecting on that shows how important it is. But yeah, for us, culture has been a massive focus, especially this year, in terms of getting that balance right and having a bit of fun as you go along the way.
Scott, you touched on it earlier on. 10 years in the Scotland squad. Cus, you must have been about similar length of time. You guys keeping a good eye on how the Scotland team are going. It was a strange end to the Six Nations, not getting that Wales game away, but the France game was a performance that everybody could be really proud of. Did you get a chance to see some of the Six Nations, Scotty?
Yeah, watched the games. Yeah, like I say, I'm very excited about Scottish rugby right now. I mean, and not just the way we're playing, but I think the depth of players that there are as well is way better than it used to be. There's young kids coming through that are like, I'm terrible with names, but the young seven that got punched in the French game,
Jamie Ritchie. He's brilliant, isn't he?
I think he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant.
You know what else you'd like about him, Scotty? He's got a wee bit in him. There's a wee bit of nastiness in him.
Yeah. I mean, that. Yeah. So, he must be like 12 or something. How old is he?
Yeah, I think he's just turned 14. He's early 20s.
So, I mean, that's just brilliant. It's great to see and it's great to watch. And yeah, they're playing. I think they're playing. I'd like to see them play a more expansive game. Sometimes they try and hit up a lot more than out, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I think they're in a good place, and I think they're growing. And hopefully Greg is enjoying himself, and he's got the right fellas beside him.
Well, Scotty, Cuss, it's been an absolute pleasure to get you on to hear about what's going on both in your rugby lives and in your family lives. Thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully catch up again soon, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a great catch up. Great to see everyone. And go Scotland.
Yeah, thanks guys. That was fun.
Well, delighted to invite back onto the podcast Professor Jason Leitch, who is the National Clinical Director for the Scottish Government. Now, Jason, before we go into questions, we've got lots of questions I'm going to ask you. I need to just say, I think you're the most well-known man in Scotland now. You are on every TV advert going.
I'm so sorry.
Is it hard for you to walk down the street these days without being flagged or noticed?
It's not hard. People are lovely. So, in fact, I was going to say the vast majority are lovely. Actually, everybody who's met me either travelling to work or if I've done my very slow so-called run 5K around the block have been absolutely lovely to me. I've had some lovely messages from kids who have thanked me for being part of the team that's protected them and everything. It's really nice. Don't look on my social media, Mum. So some of it is a bit more nasty. But
Oh, is
that's
that
a
right?
little echo chamber
Yeah.
that people can yell down.
Yeah,
It's
it's a funny old thing. Social media is
really
the best
is.
thing, the worst thing that's ever happened to us. But I suppose you ultimately are the man with the good news, or we're hoping you're the man with the good news. But I suppose you've got to deliver some harder news at times as well.
Mixed news, I think. But I think since we last spoke, when did we last speak? 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe?
Yeah, I think
So,
before.
so since then, you got to be so careful, because to celebrate fewer deaths in a community is a pretty tough thing to celebrate, So let's keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
People are still dying of this disease. There's still hundreds of people in hospital tonight with this disease, and there's about 20 or 30 people with their families in intensive care. So you should base everything that follows on those statistics. And that's really difficult to watch a loved one on a ventilator, or to try and grieve at a time when you can't have a proper funeral. So we should keep it in perspective. However, in the weeks since we last met, those numbers have fallen fairly consistently and pretty dramatically. So we were talking about thousands of people in beds, and at our peak we normally have 190 intensive care beds across Scotland in normal times, and we had well over that just with COVID cases. So we had 200 and something COVID cases in intensive care, whereas we didn't even have that number of beds in January, February. So there's definitely hope, more than green shoots of hope. This disease is being controlled in Scotland, but we are not completely out of the woods because the virus is still there.
And just on that, from you talked about the changes that have happened since we last spoke. Jason, can you just give us more of an update on the COVID-19 situation from maybe more of a professional and domestic sport in Scotland? Yeah,
so we're in phase 1. So since we met, there's been a route map published with 4 phases. Mm-hmm. And each of those phases, it's fairly predictable. Each sector, whether you're elite sport or oil and gas or garden centres, each of those phases take you through a gradual reopening back to normality. The challenge, of course, is that the core public health measure is still physical distancing. And that stays with us right through the route map until phase 4. So that's a big challenge. And we'll come on to what that means for elite sports like rugby and grassroots sports like rugby in a moment or two, probably. So we're in phase 1. Phase 1 allows us to, remember, we've only got so much headroom to play with. So the biggest question I'm getting in the last 2 weeks is, why can't I do this or why can't I do that? Well, the reason you can't do that is because there were judgments made about what could go back first. Now, that's hard. So to defend that position, I really need the First Minister beside me, because quite a lot of those judgments are politician judgments, not advisor judgments. I advise with others what the kind of headroom looks like. But if the First Minister decides that it's more important to bring back early years for vulnerable children than it is to bring back whatever I pick, I'm going to get in trouble. So let's choose further education, for example. Do we think it's more important to bring back early years for autistic kids than it is to bring back further education to teach our engineers? Probably. But we've also got to incorporate into that the social change we're trying to do. So we also made a decision that it was important that families could connect, as well as some businesses, as well as some sport, as well. So we're trying to balance all of those things together and do what's best for the whole country, rather than just one person's passion for X sport. Or I'm being very careful, because the last time I mentioned mountain biking, all the mountain bikers went mental and hated me for about 3 weeks. So I've got to be cautious when I give examples. So using your headroom appropriately in a society, I think, is the right thing to do. And you see that being played out slightly differently in different countries. So Germany chooses a different set of priorities than Scotland, and everywhere else in the world does it slightly differently.
Just on that, so obviously we're in phase 1 at the moment. As I believe the next date in terms of easing the lockdown slightly is 18th of June. What will that next phase look like from your perspective? So
let's separate 2 things. There is a legal requirement to review the rules every 3 weeks. The next date for that legal review by the First Minister and her Cabinet is the 18th of June. The route map suggests that, if possible, we would like to move through those phases in thinking about those 3 weekly reviews, but that is in no way guaranteed. So the 3 weeks is the legal requirement. Phase 2 does not necessarily follow. However, if things continue to go in the right direction, if tomorrow's mortality data falls again, etc., then it would seem sensible that some of phase 2 would hopefully come in on the 18th, 19th of June. And the First Minister indicated that in the press conference today, that she was hopeful that she'd be able to do that on an ongoing basis. So that will do more release of each of the sectors we've just described. It starts to talk about non-essential shops. It starts to talk about professional sport returning. It starts to talk about what it would mean for families to meet perhaps in bigger groups. What it doesn't yet do is give specific guidance on each of those elements. But between now and Thursday the 18th, we will, in consultation with stakeholder groups, work out what that guidance might mean. So would the construction industry move? They've got a 5-point plan. Would they go to point number 3 on their plan? And what would that actually look like if you were building a house or changing a railway track or whatever that might look like? So the route map is fairly high level and generic. More detailed guidance for each sector, including elite sports, to follow within the next 10 days or so if we move to phase 2. The only other thing I would say, and this is the hard bit, not everything in phase 2 will happen at the same time. I think it's unlikely that we will use the whole bucket all at once. So it's likely that there will be a prioritization exercise, again done by politicians, with guidance from others about what we can do. Because if we go too fast, we'll go back to before we started the route map, never mind into the route map. So we've got to be cautious.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you kind of are getting the impression that we are moving in the right direction and things are starting to look a little bit better. Would you say that from your point of view, and I guess the First Minister's point of view, we're progressing out of lockdown at as quick a rate as you'd have hoped?
I've been very pleased with the data I've seen over the last week and a half. However, you've got to remember this virus works, it's an average, but this virus works in roughly 3-week chunks. The 3-week is not because the Lord Advocate chose the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks is because the virus chose 3 weeks. So it takes a week to get it, roughly, because of the incubation period. You're sick for a week, and if you're gonna do well, your symptoms are kind of getting better after a week. And if you're going to get really bad, you're really bad in week 3. And that's when you end up in hospital. So we start to get hospital admission data. We start to get intensive care admission data. So we won't know what phase 1 did for at least another week into week 3. Do you see what I mean? So
yeah,
it's
definitely.
very important not to get... So the admissions we're seeing just now were before phase 1 opened up at all. So therefore, you see some of the behaviours last weekend that were making us a bit shaky, that were making the Cabinet Secretary and the First Minister and I a bit concerned. And you saw us going on the media and telling folk just to be a little bit more careful.
If we do get that secondary spike, Jason, does that literally take us back that 3-4 week period, depending on the severity of it?
Correct. So that second bit's very important, Ali. So it depends on what that looks like. We are very hopeful that we won't end up with what we had in the early days of April, with hundreds of people in hospital and hundreds of people in intensive care. But the virus, you remember the R number about how infective this virus is. So this virus can get out of control really pretty fast. So that's why we need the lead indicators to help us to know what to do and when. So we're cautiously optimistic that we appear to have reduced the number of people with the virus to a level that is now controlling it. But remember, we've had everybody in their houses. So we're now layering things on top of each other to try and protect us. The first is reducing the viral incidence. So social distancing, hand washing, staying at home as much as you can, working from home, all of that. That's point number 1. The second one is our test and protect system. So we're now trying to find every symptomatic case, literally every symptomatic case. We want them to tell us. And then we're giving them a test. If they're positive, We're telling them to stay home. But then the important step is we're then tracing their contacts. And symptomatic or not, they are being told to isolate. So that is a crucial protection element for the population to continue to suppress the virus. But it needs individual cooperation. It needs you to do as you're told, which Scotland in the main has done up to this point, but it's a big ask. If I phone you and say you were in a meeting with Rachel and Rachel's now tested positive, we need you're symptom-free, you think you can go back to your work, you think you can go back to training. Because you were with Rachel for more than 15 minutes, we're going to ask you to self-isolate for 14 days just in case you have the virus. That's quite a big ask for people, but that's the level of protection we now need to put in place.
So you mentioned kids getting back to rugby. You said earlier on about ideally moving forward into phase 2, depending on where we get to in the next week to 10 days. The return to some degree of professional sport in a safe and well thought out manner. Now, I know you've been part of the ongoing conversations between Scottish Rugby and Scottish Government, and were part of the meeting that took place about a week ago, 10 days ago. Can you give us a bit of insight from your side as to that roadmap that we're working on together?
Yep. So I thought that was an excellent meeting. I don't know what the rugby side thought, but Mr. Fitzpatrick and I, who's the Minister for Public Health and Sport, met with a number of sports that afternoon. So horse racing and football and rugby and some others. And I think the rugby plans are, honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm on your show. They are excellent. They're well thought through. They're using international examples. Your clinical teams, so James Robson and others, are very prominent in that decision making. I think that's crucial. This is not a rugby problem. This is a clinical public health problem, and we have to adapt your sport and your training to that problem. So things like outdoor gyms safer than indoor gyms. How would you use all of Murrayfield's pitches to do physical distanced coaching, but still have everybody doing the same kind of exercise? So they've thought that through deeply, and I can't do that. Robson and the players and the teams in place at Murrayfield have to do that, and then we look at it and say, well, we're a little bit worried about that over there, or how are you going to do changing rooms? What are you going to do about people arriving in cars who live a little bit further away? So all of those things. But honestly, I thought the plans were excellent. If given the go ahead to phase 2, they have plans in place for what that outdoor training would look like in physically distanced groups, unless you live in the same household, protecting everybody, not using too much of the indoor space. So moving the Murrayfield gyms to outdoor space, because we know the virus doesn't like outdoors, and then how the Murrayfield campus would be used for entrance and exit, keeping the catering staff here. And I thought it was really, really good, and we were happy with it. What we don't know yet is when we can fire the trigger to allow them to do it, but we're hopeful that'll be phase 2.
And Jason, when it gets to that, the return of professional sport, do you still see that as being behind closed doors initially?
I do. I think crowds is a separate challenge, and I think we'll solve the smaller group challenge before we solve the bigger group challenge. So if you watch the Bundesliga in the last couple of weeks, where Germany's had low incidence, they've created bubbles of, I think, about 1,300 people inside these Bundesliga bubbles of players, coaches, and staff, very, very separated. And then others who run the stadium, the journalists, the commentators, as a separate bubble. That has worked relatively well, but even in there, they've got some positive cases. So in the Premiership, you can see they're doing widespread testing in the Premiership, and every week they're finding just a few on the edge of those positive tests. So I think Murrayfield, in the phase plan that they showed, that they have done work about what Murrayfield would look like physically distanced. So they're thinking about that already. So what would it mean to keep every second row free? How would you get a crowd in a one-way system? How would you? And all of that is really good, because that's where until we get treatment or vaccine, that's what we're going to have to think about. And Murrayfield's big, so it's full on All Blacks Day. But if if you had the Warriors playing, then maybe you wouldn't need 75,000. But so could you work that out and make it 15,000? And that seemed eminently possible. And the good thing about Murrayfield is you don't need to go indoors to get to your seat. You are outdoors the whole time. So ways of managing that were, I thought pretty well thought through.
Do you think you've kind of mentioned quite a bit about how well set up Murrayfield is from the perspective of trying to distance and train well? Do you think from looking at getting sport played again, it's a venue that will be used for other sports, someone like football, for example?
I think that's a real possibility. It seems to me that if we create a safe environment for elite sports, whether that's the women's team rugby, the men's team rugby, and that's available, and there's both space and resource and time, then I don't see any reason. And Murrayfield were very open to that conversation with Hibs and Hearts, for example, about what that might look like. Murrayfield just has a large footprint which allows you to do that, because you've got the external pitches and the big Murrayfield pitch, so it allows you to do something. Hampden's got some of that. It's got quite a lot of space, but it's right in the middle of it's very close to its residential area. It's a little bit more difficult. So it seems to me that Murrayfield and maybe Scotstoun, other areas, lend themselves to that campus approach where you can really protect what's coming in and out a little bit more. And the SFA and the SRU, I know, have had conversations around that, and we were very encouraging of it.
Yeah, I suppose to your point, it's a wider footprint of the stadium, not just the stadium itself. The fact that there's so much space in and around it. Jason, we talk about professional sport there, but the vast majority of people in this country and all countries participating in sport aren't doing that at a professional level. What differences do you believe will come in, and what further challenges will grassroots sports face that professional sports might be a little bit further ahead on?
Yeah, so I think this is hard, Ali. I think this is really hard, and it really upsets me when I get quite a lot of messages from just ordinary families saying, when can my girls play rugby again? When can my boys play football again? You know, just those normal life questions. And it's really difficult to see an immediate way where contact sport can return. Let's bear in mind here that we've only been in this for 3 months. I mean, we're coming out the other end, and we're all impatient about what that will look like. We all want back to the coffee shops and the cafes and the Indian restaurants, and to play sport and to watch sport. So that's coming. So, but we're going to just have to do it in steps. So I think we'll get back to training quicker than we'll get back to contact games, and we'll get back to practice games in smaller groups before we get back to competitive under 13 rugby. But we're going to have to do that in a staged way, just like the elite version is going to have to do it in a staged way. And every conversation we had with football and rugby, including last week's, was not just focused on the elite game. The people should be reassured that those conversations in rugby circles and other sports are absolutely also about the grassroots. And the Scottish Institute of Sport and Sport Scotland and Active Scotland are all very engaged. And I think they've got 56 plans from different sports, from snooker to croquet to rugby to Olympic sports and Paralympic sports, about how they'll manage that process over time. What they need from me, which I can't give them yet, is the authority and the advice about exactly when that moment might be. And it won't be suddenly on a Tuesday night we're back to normal, I'm afraid. It will be that staged process we've just described.
I suppose there's the wider, I know our rugby development team are working on it with the clubs very closely, and providing the ability to play sport, to play rugby for us is a massive part of what these clubs do. But there's more to it than that. There's the community hub. There's the ability to pull people together in a socially distanced environment to make sure that the club space is being utilised as best as possible, even if you can't get the games on the park. I
think it's huge, Ali. And I think there's also broader about the nature of sports clubs and the hub they are for food, for community spirit, and I know lots of rugby clubs and other sports clubs have stepped up to do that in society, to help the vulnerable and to provide a family home for some more vulnerable kids. My wife's a high school teacher in North Lanarkshire, and she's been in a community hub, an emergency school. And it's really, really challenged kids and families that have been using those hubs because the school is so much more than an education environment for them. It's a family, it's social workers, it's everything, it's pastoral care. And sports clubs, I think, provide a similar home for that inside their local communities, whether it's in Kelso or in Greenock. That we've got to get that back as fast as we can. And I worry about kids and young people being in their homes or in their small environments for too long. That's got to be a problem.
And Jason, just on that, when people are outside at the moment, we are still, adhering to the social distancing. But, we've seen other countries implement maybe 1 metre rules for social distancing. Do you see Scotland potentially adapting to that in the near future?
I think we're a long way from that, honestly. The WHO say that distance from the virus is not an exact thing. So it's not something magic happens at 2 metres or something magic happens at 1 metre. The further away you are, the less likely you are to catch the virus. And it's a percentage game. It's a risk game. So at 2 metres, it's pretty hard to catch the virus. At 1 metre, it's hard, but easier. You see what I mean? And then if you're right in front of somebody chatting to them, then it's easier again. So a lot of European countries, having watched the science around the world, have decided that 2 metres, and people also don't quite understand what 2 metres is. 2 metres is quite far. So we've got a margin of error in our 2 metres that means some people are probably 1.5 metres, some are maybe even a wee bit closer. And it's also about time, not just distance. So, and it's the way you're facing. So I was talking to, would you believe the teams that fix Scotland's railways recently, because a lot of the development work has had to be stopped, and they were asking, well, what if when you move a railway track, you can do that back to back rather than front to front, so you can have two workers with their backs to each other. Well, they're not going to pass the virus to each other. So there are other things you can do about time and position, so that you're away from each other, because you've got to take the droplet from you to somebody else. So there's common sense in there, but I think the fundamentals of the 2 metres now pretty much embedded outside Morrison's and Asda. I think we're stuck with it for a while.
How much is what's going on elsewhere a help to what we're looking to do here, and how much is potentially a hindrance as far as people looking and saying, oh, why can't we be doing that?
Yeah, so I think in the main it's a helpful thing to try and learn. I'm laughing because every single day a journalist asks me about some simplistic country comparison to say, why don't we do what Israel did? Why don't we do what Denmark did? And they are always too simplistic. And the journalist knows that. They're just trying to play that game. A deep understanding of the virus and how countries are reacting to the virus is hugely important to us. About importation of cases through travel, about face coverings and how that's happening, and about how lockdown is working here and there. What's happening with schools in Denmark, for instance, just now is very important to us. And we also see South Korean schools closing down again. We see Iran having a second spike. We see some bad stuff, and that worries us and makes us cautious. And then the global science network, which I've never seen work at this pace ever, is working together on treatment, on drugs, on vaccines. So it's really important that the WHO hold all of that together for us. So every single day I get an Excel spreadsheet of that day's research, would you believe? I mean, you can't possibly keep up with it. It's huge. You get 30, 40 different scientific papers a day on this disease. And that's allowed us to do things like, we now know that absence of taste and smell is important enough for us to add it to the symptoms list. So now we're asking people to notice that. There are 17 symptoms of this disease, but none of them are specific enough. None of them are just COVID. They are hay fever, they are colds, they're other things. So we need to try and learn as we get more cases to try and make that symptom list more specific.
Well, Jason, conscious you're a busy man and no doubt have further appointments later today. I just wanted, if I could, to turn it back to rugby and ask you what you believe are the biggest challenges facing rugby in the coming months, as well as the wider opportunities. We've talked about it before. What sport rugby for us can bring to the community? How do you see that playing out over the next few months?
I think sport has a absolutely crucial role to play at a number of levels. So there's the physical activity piece. There's the encouraging people to be active and all of that. But sport is much, much wider in the Scottish psyche than just that. It's community, it's family get together, it's just meeting in a pub and watching a rugby game, or going to your local park and watching your teenage daughter playing in a rugby match. I mean, it's huge for Scottish society, not just rugby, but some folk, it might be snooker's your game. I don't really care what it is, but the community engagement in that is so important. So I can absolutely promise you that you have very strong advocates for return inside the Scottish government. Not just me, but the Minister for Sport, the First Minister, the Deputy First, very keen that sport is in the spreadsheet when we decide what comes back at what pace. The challenges, of course, are sport is a different thing from running the Grangemouth oil refinery or running the clothes shop in Buchanan Gallery. So we've got to work out what each of those elements need and what safe looks like in a donut shop and what safe looks like in a school-run community rugby game. And that is what your organisation and your players, coaches and experts are helping us do. But I promise you that sport, rugby, have not been forgotten in that process. And we will, when it is possible to give you the green light, I'm confident that your teams, your medical teams and those who look after your players at every level are ready for when that green light comes.
Professor Jason Leitch, really informative and great to get you back on the podcast. And as we said last time, it'd be great to get you back on in a couple of weeks when the landscape no doubt changes again. But thank you very much for your time. I'll let you go now, but stay safe.
Great, Jamie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Cheers, Jason.
That's all from us here on the official Scottish Rugby podcast. But once again, we will be back here next week with more exclusive content.